This is Defenders TV Podcast, episode 117, about Defenders Season 1, Episode 5, Take Shelter.
You think I'm holding back?
Welcome back, fellow Defenders. This is Episode 5 of the first season of The Defenders, Take Shelter. I am one of your hosts, John.
I'm one of your other hosts, Chris.
And I'm your final host, Derek.
Yeah, we have The Hand teaming up. Their own little moment here at the Royal Dragon as the fight continues. Yes, but also the podcasting continues. So please head on over to defenderstvpodcast.com/iTunes and please subscribe over on Apple Podcasts, or you can just search Defenders TV Podcast on any other good or evil podcast catcher. And as well, we are all on Facebook at the moment, commenting, discussing within our Facebook group. If you would like to join that group, please head on over to facebook.com/groups/Defenders TV Podcasts. But if you want to send in any thoughts or discussion on this episode of The Defenders Take Shelter, please, you can send emails at feedback@defenderstvpodcast.com or leave a voicemail over on our website at defenderstvpodcast.com. Click on the right-hand side tab and you can leave up to 90 seconds of voicemail. Share our thoughts and we will bring them to this podcast in our feedback section. But I think with that, Derek, what are some of the episode details?
Absolutely, yeah. This episode was again written by Lauren Smith-Hizrith, Marco Ramirez and Doug Petrie. They've been involved in each and every episode so far this season, so you can really see the guiding hand involved in the show. It's really good.
Yeah, it really links up really well, doesn't it? With this consistency of writers pulling through from the episodes they've previously written on. Yeah, really good.
And one of the big criticisms probably for Iron Fist really was that there wasn't a consistent hand throughout the show. It really feels like this is a show that is from one central group of people. It's really cool.
Yeah, what we're seeing here is what you see across comic books. There's consistency, there's continuity across every action that's taking place, especially when what we see is not just the Defenders and the Hand pulling together and they're as a team. We see the supporting characters as well.
Yeah.
And it seems that the supporting characters that each of these writers have dealt with previously are handled greatly.
Yeah, absolutely. This episode was directed by Uta Breiswitz. She has done 2 other episodes for the Defenders series as a whole. She's worked on Iron Fist with Underleaf Plucked Lotus and on Jessica Jones with AKA I've Got the Blues. Great to see another one of our Defenders directors back.
Definitely, everyone getting involved from the past series of the Defenders in this series now, which is really, really cool. As well, everyone, if you want to get your hands or have the chance to get your hands on some Defenders goodies, we are holding a competition. You remember the feedback stuff we talked about? If you send in feedback, well then you are in with a chance to win a bunch of Defenders related goodies in our prize draw on our last episode of Defenders.
Yep, send in your feedback and we'll include you in our prize draw at the end of the series. John, do you want to tell us what they gave us with your synopsis for this episode?
Sure. As Alexandra and Elektra keep the Defenders busy, the other fingers of the Hand prepare for war. Matt takes an opportunity to speak to the Black Sky and drives her from the battle by revealing he knows who she is. Meanwhile, after battling with the factions, Luke captures Sowande. He reveals that they will do anything to get the Iron Fist and threaten those they love. The Defenders start to bring those they care about under the protection of Misty Knight at the NYPD, just as the Hand try to locate the Immortal Iron Fist after the Battle of the Royal Dragon. But despite their coordinated response, cracks begin to appear between the fingers of the Hand, as Murakami reports a dangerous turn of events, that Daredevil, the last one to have loved the vessel known as Elektra Natchios, has joined with Danny Rand. Gao, Murakami, and Bakuto question Alexandra's unilateral actions to resurrect the Black Sky and pledge to form another plan to return to Kunlun without their weapon. Meanwhile, as Daredevil interrogates Sowande about the Hand's plan and Elektra, he manages to escape his bonds, holding the Iron Fist at knife point, until Stick uses his skills in Katana to slice off Sowande's head. The Black Sky, grappling with her encounter with Matt Murdock, has slipped Alexandra and has now made her way to a very familiar apartment in Hell's Kitchen.
So we see the kind of formation of the Hand together in this episode. We got a lot last episode from Alexandra about how when they get together, they can be a formidable force. In this episode, we see all the cracks starting to form. Not only do we have Madame Gao and Murakami and Bakuto questioning Alexandra, we also have Madame Gao questioning Bakuto's motives and what he's in this for. So I think that's really cool in this episode.
Yeah, I mean, Gao and Bakuto certainly have their history from the Iron Fist series, where he actually held her as a prisoner at one point. So, yeah, it's a really interesting thing. I was wondering how that would be sort of looked at and covered within this. They do that. It's quite short, but nonetheless, they do tackle it. But, yeah, that is interesting, because we did wonder on Iron Fist whether Gao was really maybe a different faction of the Hand, let alone one of the Five Fingers. But as you are aware, hopefully by now, or if you're not, if you're new to the Defenders TV podcast, we cover the episode with our top 5 points. And just so you know, it will be spoiler-filled from here on in. So, Derek.
I think it's been pretty spoiler-filled so far.
Well, that's true. Well, more spoiler-filled.
Probably, yeah. Yes, our first point is about the preparations for war. I love this opening scene to the classical music as Madame Gao gets her sword-wielding ninjas together. Sowande gets his gun-toting maniacs together in the back of the van that we saw at the end of last episode. And then Murakami starts just walking across the roofs of the city of New York to get to the Royal Dragon restaurant to go after the Defenders. I love this kind of setup. I love this moment. I think it's pretty cool.
Yeah, it also seemed slightly out of sorts, I should say, that Murakami doesn't have a legion behind him either. We got the sense from Alexander that he is a force to be reckoned with when he comes out of the shadows.
Oh yeah,
and that he usually sends Nobu, but when he comes out kind of and is a force. We see that in this episode that he doesn't need an army of gun-toting lunatics or sword-wielding ninjas. Mm-hmm. He is the weapon. He is just his own henchman.
He's just that badass, yeah.
Definitely. Like, I love this with the classical music playing in the background, seeing Madame Gao, Sowande, and Murakami coming together. It was just really, really cool. And I mean, the scene as Murakami comes crashing through the skylight into the Royal Dragon restaurant, down onto the table, whilst Elektra is fighting the Defenders and Stick. Like, that was really, really cool. Gao and Murakami, I think So we have the formation of Team Hand here, really, and we have Team Defenders. So this is really cool, this kind of face-off coming here. And, of course, later on in the episode, we get to see the return of Bakuto as well. Colleen Wing's former sensei is back here with a vengeance, resurrected from the dead. So, yeah. Unfortunately, the good news that Stick talked about in last episode, that he's dead, unfortunately has crumbled to ashes here.
Yeah, doesn't last long at all. I love, as the battle is raging on in the Royal Dragon, you have Jessica Jones and Luke Cage going up against Elektra. Again, someone that they generally wouldn't fight. They generally don't go up against people that that know kung fu, I suppose. So I just liked Luke Cage kind of shouting out, "She's so annoying, isn't she?" Where the two of them are fighting. It's one of the things we don't really see with Luke. He's very much obviously called a bulletproof character, so we don't see him fight against people with swords very often. And in this, we don't see him really get struck with a sword at all. I'm wondering if his skin being unbreakable, should it not break the swords that are hitting him? But they haven't really used an opportunity to see him be poked with a sword. He blocks the sword from Elektra once and knocks it out of her hand because of his strength. But we don't see him actually getting hit with it in the stomach or anything like that, you know.
And it just sort of shattering. Yeah, exactly. You would think that would definitely happen. Yeah, I mean, this battle when they come in, Sowande comes all guns blazing.
So cool.
And I love Gao just taking out a gun and shooting one of his men and saying, "We want this guy alive," in reference to the Iron Fist.
Mm-hmm.
I also like Iron Fist trying to protect Jessica, who really is kind of pretty short with him, with like, get off me, leave me alone. So
that was a brilliant one.
Yeah, really, really cool. But yeah, the fighting here in the Royal Dragon is phenomenal. It's really well choreographed. I absolutely love it.
It was really interesting to see that we get most of the fighting done by majority of the characters, and what I enjoyed what I saw. It was fantastic. It was, as John said, well choreographed.
Yeah.
But I found it strange that, one, we saw Alexandria kind of slink off into the corner.
Mm-hmm.
So obviously she's not prepared to fight, or not well enough to fight, question mark.
Maybe.
But more that Matt, like, I was expecting this was the showdown between Matt and Elektra I wanted. And they slunk off to the corner as well, out of shot, out of this, because I was hoping to see like Elektra kill some of the own henchmen,
right,
just to get at Matt and the rest of them.
Oh, interesting, yeah.
Yeah, that kind of moves us on to the second point, which is that Matt is continuously trying to reason with Elektra throughout this episode.
Yeah, and it does start out with effectively Elektra kicking him out the back door of the place. He keeps punching him down another hallway. So as he's trying to reason with her, trying to have a moment with Elektra, or what he thinks is Elektra and is actually Black Sky, they have a proper battle as they go out. It's really cool. I love the outdoor battle where Matt is besting her in some senses, and she's taking back out her power on him that she has. So they're fighting for the first time with her with their new powers. It's quite cool.
Yeah, I mean, I actually think that Matt Murdock, he is the first one to attack as they get enclosed by a ring of henchmen. Mm-hmm. He's the first one to attack, and he kind of knocks two out the way and goes straight for Elektra, forcing her down that way. I think you see Stick really saying, or trying to come out and say, Matt, what are you doing? But yeah, I love that scene where they're fighting, but he's trying to restrict her movement and her fighting so he can actually talk to her. And it seems as though it's only when he mentions Elektra that he gets through to her. It reminds me of a film where they've done that, and I can't quite recall it at this stage. But yeah, that whole like that stop and start of fighting, But the interesting thing here, and this is where Murakami's suspicions then begin to build, and I suppose will have ramifications later in this episode, it is where he comes out. He thinks she is protecting her kill as he comes out, and she punches him against one of the wheelie bins. Yeah. But in fact, she then just heads off and escapes.
Yeah.
Leaving the battle.
It's very interesting. I love that he just kind of turns that on Alexandra again. He says, as Madame Gao arrives outside, he says, this is a question for our leader, why Elektra isn't here, effectively. So quite interesting. He seems to be also twisting it towards to usurping the leader, Alexandra, as well. It's quite cool.
Yeah, and Gao with the old ninja punch as well.
Yeah, we didn't mention it last episode. As Elektra arrived at the Royal Garden, she pushes the door, and the barricade that Jessica Jones had put up, she pushes out of her way with some form of power. And this episode, we see Madame Gao do the same kind of thing. So Elektra is definitely more superpowered than she was in Daredevil Season 2.
No, it was an interesting thing. As you said, the last episode we didn't mention that. It was actually only after we kind of went off air, and myself and Derek were going, oh yeah, she blew that door up pretty well. Mm-hmm. This is not the first time we've seen Madame Gao, though, kind of do that, the palm punch that blows people and doors away. We also know that all chi-wielding martial artists in the Marvel Universe just hate doors.
That's true, yes.
Doors are enemy number one in this universe.
They were of Iron Fist, without a doubt, definitely.
And Jessica Jones.
Yeah, yes, true.
That door is abused, I think.
Absolutely. I do like that it's the mention of the name Elektra to her that stops her in her tracks, that stops Black Sky in her tracks, and she effectively runs away to ponder the question from then on. So this threat from Alexandra to Elektra is quite interesting when they do catch up with her later, where she's effectively sharpening her swords back in the hand's base. Is that the most unnerving thing you can see somebody do when you arrive into a room, especially somebody trained with a sword, to arrive into their room and they're just sharpening the swords as you arrive in? You know, again, Alexandra is a very strong, tough woman who doesn't seem to be unnerved very easily, so maybe she's not unnerved by it. But if I walked in and I had something very important to say to someone, I'd do what Alexandra did and just take the sword away if I possibly could.
Again, she didn't seem that unnerved by it, because she really then threatens Elektra here by saying, if you aren't a weapon against our enemies, you are useless to the hand and to me. Mm-hmm. And I suspect by implication of that, she would kill the Black Sky or dispose of it in some way. And I thought that's really interesting, because it seemed to contrast with her slinking out of the Royal Dragon. Like, there's that really nice moment where her she's in the back of the car and the window goes down, and there is the look that Sigourney Weaver does. It's almost one of, this hasn't gone the way I was expecting. And it's like she knows, or it has some kind of sense that Elektra has left the field of battle type of thing here. So that was kind of really interesting. Mm-hmm. But do you reckon there is a Mutant Ninja Turtle reference here?
100%. 100%. The stick, a Splinter kind of charging his 4 charges down to the sewer to hide.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
That's definitely a reference to Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Yeah, definitely kind of cool. So yeah, as the battle rages on outside the Royal Dragon, we do see that Sowande goes up against Luke. We definitely see him try and use that move that Alexandra had talked about in the last episode, where he tries punching him in various locations, and he seems to be getting a little bit successful with Luke. Luke doesn't seem to be does seem to be taken off the board a little bit until they get outside, and then it's only a garbage truck smacking into Luke that takes him out of the fight.
Yeah. I actually really wished that move had worked on Luke. I think the one thing for me is that I'm loving all these fights. I really want the element of danger for one of our 4. Like, at the moment, I'm kind of there going, oh no, if someone dies here, it's going to be Stick. He's going to be, he's the last remaining member of the Chaste. And I think, obviously, the Hand are after Danny Rand, so yes, he is in danger. Mm-hmm. But I really want to see some proper danger element to one of the 4, and I thought that could have been a really nice way, just because Sowande comes out of there and he says, you're said to be the unbreakable man, we will see. I will break you, or something to that effect. And I would have loved to have seen, it's a bit like with the bullet that Luke Cage got, where
Judas bullet.
Yeah, the Judas bullet. That really, it just added a bit of uncertainty to how invincible he was. And I think that idea that he would have done that heart slowing move, and the heart begins to slow on Luke, and it's in danger of going into cardiac arrest, that would have really raised the stakes here, that the Hand could take these people out, whereas I think that needs to be some element, certainly moving forward.
I definitely like the idea of something mystical being used on Luke, because he's impenetrable to bullets, that kind of thing. But yeah, I liked a truck taking him out was quite interesting. And when he arrives back into the Colleen's dojo later on, and everybody asks how he is, and he says, I'm really well, actually. I'm very good. I was kind of going, is he just going, well, now I know that trucks running me over can't kill me? Is that because he just had this moment of realization, and now he's going, I'm pretty good, actually. I'm not just the bulletproof guy. I'm the guy that trucks can run over, and I'll be okay.
Yeah.
But it's not. It's the fact that he has captured Sowande.
Yeah, point 3 is Sowande is captured by Luke, and I should say is pretty proud that he's managed to capture one of the hand. But yeah, Sowande as a character, like, is very, very cool. I loved, a bit like when Gao was being interrogated by the Iron Fist, where she really just, takes it and swaps the power play there within that interrogation. We have the same here being attempted by Sowande,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think Sowande is really terrifying in this scene. I'm really liking this actor in this role. I love how he's kind of calling out each of the defenders for their failures. He's saying he doesn't want Danny Rand. He wants the Iron Fist. He says he's the stupidest Iron Fist yet. Why would they want Danny Rand, who failed the city that he was sworn to protect? Which is obviously Danny's big his big weakness at the moment. He calls out Luke Cage for not protecting the kid that he was trying to protect from Harlem. That he dies in prison under his watch, and then he calls out Jessica for allowing the architect to die when he came to her office. What kind of heroes are these people if all the people that they are sworn to protect or they want to protect die in their charge?
Yeah, I mean, Sowande really riles up Jessica here, because he goes, "Am I getting into your head like he did?" Obviously, with that reference to Kilgrave.
Yeah.
And then really proceeds to threaten all their closest loved ones and the people they care about. So, yeah, he's really good. And I mean, even just like his supreme confidence is shown again, where it's just him and Stick left alone, where Sowande talks about members of the Chaste capturing him many years ago before Stick was even born, and how by the end of it they were on their knees asking for the torture of a siege around a castle or a fort to stop. So really, he has much power, much longevity, and he's a very, very cool character, and really well acted as well. Love it. Although you probably shouldn't like these people, Derek, because Sowande, yeah, off with his head.
Oh, yeah.
So with Sowande, actually, as you said, this actor he's fantastic, and I know he's done a stint in Gotham for an episode.
Yep.
He was in The Night Of again for an episode. He's always been a more kind of an in and out terrifying kind of character.
Yeah.
Or kind of actor, I should say. But he's been in a lot of other things, and I think across these 4 episodes that he's been in, his presence has always been felt. But now we know that, it's not just from a martial arts kind of perspective. He is also a skilled, well, I don't know what you'd say, counter interrogation specialist.
Well, it's just his voice is amazing.
Yeah.
Definitely.
But it's like he was sitting there being interrogated, yet managed to get them riled up, whereas he was calm, and it was just
exactly so cool. And we do get that awesome scene when Daredevil's back in his suit, using the billy clubs around Sowande's neck, trying to get the information from him. Daredevil does go pretty far there. I love Danny looking at them going, "These are so cool."
Yeah.
And Luke not wanting to admit that he thinks they're cool as well in front of Danny, just because
Luke's too cool.
Luke's too cool, exactly. He doesn't want to think that Matt's even cooler than him, Very cool. But then Sowande breaking free and grabbing Danny by the back of the neck with a knife to it, or with a bit of glass to his neck, saying he's going to kill him.
Yeah, it says the war is won. We have the Iron Fist, and then a Nobu happens on him. He gets his head sliced off by Stick. I thought the scene was great. To begin with, I just thought he had slit his throat, really. And then he falls to his knees, and the head decides it's a bowling ball or something, and goes scuttling across the floor. Really, like, Stick is brutal, but he will get the job done, and he is certainly not shy in using force, because it's even just seeing Jessica's reaction to it. It's like, like, at the end of the day, Jessica, Luke certainly have not seen this kind of of physical violence.
Not beheadings,
You know, Luke maybe has seen it, but this is almost, a war, so people are dying frequently, and I think even just the interrogation aspect probably may have felt uncomfortable for some of the defenders. Certainly, as Daredevil slightly overeggs the pudding there, really, with Sowande, especially when he starts to get to Matt's sensitive topic of Elektra.
Yeah, definitely. Jessica's seen quite a few people kill themselves with guns to the head since the first season of Jessica Jones. There's at least been 3, as far as I remember. So she's definitely seen a lot of blood, but beheadings is definitely something that's been confined to Iron Fist and Daredevil season 1 and 2.
Absolutely. I think it's more, I suppose what I'm trying to say, it's more that it's by people on their side doing this, and that probably is a slight difference for them. It's normally been the people they're fighting against doing it to other people, or forcing other people down that route.
Mm-hmm. Well, following on from Sowande's threat to the loved ones, we get the kind of gathering of all of the loved ones in the NYPD under the sight of Misty Knight.
So yeah, Simone Missick is back in all her what would we call it? Afro goodness.
I think it's as close to an afro as we're going to get for Misty Knight, definitely. It's pretty cool.
And the hairstyle is fantastic, very comic book counterpart kind of style.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, she kind of had the nice jab at Luke going, are we on the same side on this? Luke going, come on, we're always on the same side. You don't need to ask that. Which I thought did take her back. And that's kind of made her agree to this, what would we call it? Conclave of supporting characters.
It's very cool to have them all in the same location. There's a couple of other things that go on in the episode, and we'll probably talk about those. But just simply having these characters like Colleen Wing, Foggy Nelson, Karen Page, Malcolm Ducasse, all in the same room with Trish Walker and Misty Knight, having them all in the same location, and knowing that they're going to be there next episode when we come back to the next time that we see all these characters. It's just great to have all these people from all the different series that, have never worked together before, all being in the same location. There's a great moment when Misty Knight walks into the room and says, the reason you're all here is because you're persons of interest to people who are involved in a big fight. And you see 3 of the workers that are in the middle of the room typing on their keyboards going, does she mean us?
That's cool. Yeah, I mean, I love when Jessica goes to get Trish and Murakami is there together, and that's where we see Daredevil for the first time in this episode, where Matt has put back on the suit. And yeah, I love the moment where he is kicked, pushed, thrown over the edge of the balcony there. They go down, he's disappeared, yet there's the guy with, I think he was holding orange juice, kind of like, what just happened? Yeah. Something happened. So that he was there, but did he land on his feet and run off? Like, it was very, very cool that. And even just having Colleen and Bakuto coming back face to face as well was really awesome.
Yeah, the scene where we saw the guy being flipped off the corner, I just had this vision of this, like, Daredevil's, he's going to do a superhero landing, and he just kind of, or he did that kind of, like, mid-air twisting, twirling, flipping, landing, but walking away. Like, he didn't even, like, land onto his knees, kind of into a crouch. He just started, like, striding as he was falling and continued to walk.
I'm genuinely wondering now, is this a power that the resurrected member of the Hand have? Like some form of teleportation power that we're not being shown? Because we did mention it the first time we saw Elektra. We went, she disappeared at the bottom of the stairs. We mentioned Alexandra disappearing in a scene. We've now got Murakami disappearing from a scene. Bakuto does it as well. Luke is staring at him. We have the camera focused on Danny and on Colleen and on Claire, and he disappears within the blink of an eye, at Bakuto as well. So is this some power that we're just not seeing on the show? Are we missing that they're actually showing us a superpower here that these guys all have? Because they definitely all had a moment of disappearance.
No, they're just trained by Batman.
They must be.
Yeah, it's a definite Batman move.
But speaking of Colleen and Bakuto, interesting to see the two of them back. I love the way the fight scene played out between the two of them was really cool, because last time it was sword versus sword. This time Bakuto is just dodging her blade. And it's a cool extra version of a fight scene, something different than we saw throughout Iron Fist. It's not sword on sword. It's just looks really cool. It's really interesting to see him. It's almost like a defensive master move that he's got now against Colleen. It's not trying to attack her, not trying to kill her. He's trying to have a conversation, but she's trying to kill him. He kind of says, "Whenever you're done with this, I want to talk with you." You know, he's not scared of Colleen's fighting skills.
Yeah, well, definitely Bakuto here is really probably breaking orders. Like he's called out by Gao later on in the episode because he wants to try, I presume it's genuine, to get his previous student back with him. We hear that his ruse in Iron Fist to say that she wasn't good enough for the hand was simply that, to try and put her off her fighting, but that he does actually have a huge amount of respect for Colleen Wing's abilities. I think it was an interesting little call out between his followers and Gao's followers that they have when they meet up, where Gao is kind of saying you've always had a thing and a weakness by respecting your followers ultimately, and he says, yes, I don't feel the need to blind mine. Really nice, because in Daredevil season 1 all Gao's workers are blinded other than some of her main henchmen, whilst they're doing the drug running and the drug packing. Yeah,
very cool. And we also get, in this, keeping on Colleen, definitely, because she gets some great moments in here. We have the moment where she explains, I suppose, why she went for Danny Rand earlier on in the episode, where she feels like she's just lost stability by losing out and leaving the hand, which was the right thing to do, and she knows it, but she feels like she's lost the stability in her life. And I love that Claire is telling her, well, without your help, Danny wouldn't be able to do any of this. I look around at everybody and I see that you're involved in them all. You know, I really like that moment with Claire where they get a minute to just sit back and kind of talk about what's going on in Colleen's life, because she's not a member of the Defenders. Danny's going out off and finding a new group of people, even though she's been so supportive of him over the last 4 or 5 months while he's been searching out the hand. So it is quite interesting that she's now kind of starting to break apart and now forming new relationships with new people. Herself and Claire were pretty close in Iron Fist, and you can see it throughout the season, and she's now found another new friend in Defenders. We've got a little bit of Misty and Colleen moments here.
Yeah, a little proto Daughters of the Dragon meeting up here. That was very cool. I like that. Whether a police officer or a police detective should be handing back a dangerous, sharpened katana back like that without a license, I don't know.
I'd say she's licensed. She owns her own dojo.
That is true. That is true. Still, it was also as well because, again, Colleen, hospital or a police department? Hospital or police department?
She's got the night nurse with her.
I know. There was just small things that I kind of picked up, like the one that you have with regards to Luke going to Claire Temple's apartment.
Yeah, it's only a small thing, really. It's just when Luke goes back to get Claire Temple and changes his shirt, puts on his new t-shirt, and another one of those hoodies. How many does he have? I remember kind of looking at the trailer for the Defenders and seeing that Luke was wearing exactly the same hoodie, his costume effectively from the Luke Cage series, but this time it had no bullet holes in it. And I was kind of going, okay, so he does have a brand new one that he obviously got when he came out of prison. That's not particularly mentioned, but this time he goes back fully bullet hole ridden hoodie. And then he goes in, reaches into the wardrobe, pulls out another one, sticks it on, and it's exactly the same as the last one. It doesn't even have a different colour. It's definitely his costume now. So an interesting moment, I suppose, especially because he was just called out last episode by Jessica saying, "Call me when they make you put on a costume," and he's already got one, basically.
Yeah.
He's kind of made his own costume, really, kind of like Kick-Ass or something, you know?
Yeah, when he opens his wardrobe, there are just a row of hoodies.
Must be.
We also get to see Daredevil go to get Karen, and again, like, that relationship is not in a good place. Like, she is really... She doesn't appreciate him coming here and saying, "I need to save you." It's like, that's not your call to make. But Matt is still making this call. And, that he's still getting into trouble. Yet, when he tells her, it's like she wants him to say, yes, I am doing this. And as soon as he is upfront and honest with her about what he is doing, she is actually willing to accept it. But before that, she hates him coming and saying, I need to do this for you, you, and you, because she's like, that's not what you should be doing.
Yeah.
It's the decision for me to make. And it's when he tells her what he's doing that she's happy to go.
Can I just call out something here?
Yep.
Sawande threatens the loved ones of the defenders around him, but he only calls out the nurse and the woman who talks on the radio. He never calls out any of Matt's connections at all. Yet Matt goes straight to Karen and involves her in this. Now, okay, he's had a bit of a leap there. Their lives are also threatened like the rest of the defenders are. But it is a bit of a leap. He hasn't talked to any of them in 6 months. Do all of the Hand members know about all of the people connected to him? Or has he just put them in even more danger by putting them all in the same location together?
Yeah, so that was my bit. So the danger is they're putting them into a single location, which is not that secure to have members of the Hand. And also, do they know Matt's identity?
I completely agree. That is premised on whether the Hand know that Matt is the devil of Hell's Kitchen or not. And I'm not too sure that they do.
I don't think they do.
No. And so if Matt isn't careful, he is going to reveal his identity by having people there that they can then begin to trace. And the thing is, we know how the Hand was infiltrated into the hospital in Iron Fist with one of Bakuto's students. So the idea that the Hand wouldn't have people, at the precinct level in the NYPD. So they're probably just got the list of names. You would think.
Maybe.
I suspect it's not going to play out like that, but
And remember, this is Misty's new special team that she's got. So this is not just an NYPD department. They all work for Misty on a special task force as well. So maybe she handpicked them. Possibly there's nobody in there that's from the Hand, but I do get the point though.
But there's also, you've just done it in front of Trish, who is questioning, why is there a reporter here? An investigative reporter seeing another investigative reporter. Like, this is not going to go well.
It's not, but at least it gets them all in the same room. I understand why the impetus is there from the writer's point of view.
Definitely.
But it did make me question why Matt would do it. I think it was kind of why don't you get out of town, Karen, and take Foggy with you, rather than why don't you all go to the same police station with all of the other people so we can trace you all together.
Yeah, definitely. So it's really interesting. But one of the other grouping that finally gets together, although minus Sawande, and this leads us on to our fifth point, is the Hand's plan is revealed. That as to why they need the Iron Fist and primarily the chi within him, and that is so that they can find their way back to Kunlun, or they will all die. But the interesting thing here is Gao actually calls out Alexandra by saying, "You always wanted the substance so that you could live forever. We wanted it so that we could get back to Kunlun." So there's a slight difference in objectives, at least being called out by Gao here, as to why they're going for the Iron Fist. And I think ultimately this chi is the substance that helps them get resurrected as well, I think. Because we have Bakuto calling out here, this is the first time in a long time, because you've used the substance to bring the Black Sky back, that resurrects us, and this is the first time where we're without and we are in danger. And sure enough, Murakami steps up to the plate to say we need to think of another plan. So it all kind of breaks down a bit for Alexandra, especially when she goes back to her own house and finds that Elektra is gone.
Yeah, this was really interesting for me. I've been just kind of speculating on air and kind of with the guys here, kind of what is the master plan? What is the thing that keeps them alive for years? And is it the chi? Is it the substance? Is it Kunlun in general that kind of aids them? It's just a question. I'm trying to kind of piece it together. Like, is the giant hole a portal to Kunlun, where they can get a Lazarus pit of chi, which they take and they ingest, and that kind of keeps them alive forever. It was an interesting kind of, and they stole whatever the substance was from Kunlun originally.
See that's the bit that confuses it for me, I suppose. This makes it feel like the story of the banishment of the devils from heaven, that effectively they're trying to get back to heaven. So they're trying to get back to Kunlun, and that's where they'll be able to live forever, like everybody in Kunlun. It's a mystical city. It leaves the Earth plane. It doesn't work in the same time as normal earthbound places do, I guess. What they're saying is they want to get back to there, and what Madame Gao is calling out is they want to live long enough to get back there, and then they can live forever. That's what it seems like. It doesn't feel like they want to get back there to take the chi and come back out into the world again. It feels like they're all trying to get back there. They make mention of, do you remember how beautiful it is? Do you remember how wonderful the place is? Which is almost like the kind of conversation that Satan and Lucifer and the devils would have with each other about getting back into heaven from hell. It's like the Earth realm is a hell place for these 5 people, and that's what they've been trying to do, is always work their way back into where they were banished from.
Okay, yeah, so the substance keeps them alive on Earth, but the chi of the Iron Fist will help get them back to Kunlun, or at least they need his chi to break down this door.
Exactly. Yeah, that's kind of my feeling. And it feels like by Alexandra making the bet on Black Sky being the one to get them back to Kunlun, they've now taken away the opportunity they could have. If this plan fails, they can do this another time in another 100 years or something like that, because she's used it all up to bring back Elektra, a new person outside of their original 5. She's used it all up, so this is the last chance to get back home.
Yeah, and there's very much a suggestion from the other 3 that you know Alexandra, as their leader, acted on her own, and now is speaking in the singular about herself and what she wants.
Yeah. And
all the other 3 point out there are 5 members of the Hand.
There were 5 members.
There were 5 members of the Hand. All they know at this stage is that he's been captured.
That's right.
They don't even know he's been captured. They just know he's missing.
Yeah, so, that he's missing. So, they really are sort of calling it out that there are 5 members of the Hand, and they all act together for a single cause. And so Gao's sort of initiation of that conversation is that Alexandra always had a different reason as to why this was happening, so that she could live forever.
Yeah, absolutely. I just think it's a really interesting scene. I love having these characters together in a room. I think, jokingly, you mentioned last episode, Chris, about wouldn't it be terrible if you had all these heads of the Hand around a big table in a room? Wouldn't that be so tropey? I think it's great to have it in this episode, though, after we've got to meet them all separately. Now having them all sitting around in a room discussing their big master plan is a great moment. Really enjoyed it.
But see, the thing is, they weren't just kind of like sitting in a shadowed room, kind of like they were standing and kind of still arguing. So it wasn't, the trope was there, but it wasn't the usual trope.
Exactly. That was really cool to see them all together. That's kind of the top 5 points, but there is obviously just a moment at the end of the episode with Elektra as she has left Alexandra and is going back to Daredevil's place. It's kind of cool. I think where she goes to begin with is the rooftop where she died.
Yeah, because you've got the dome there, which seemed very familiar to me from the Daredevil series. And then she heads back to and gets into Matt's apartment, which is really cool because you do get this sense that she's just kind of drinking in probably the memories that she are flooding back, or that she's beginning at least to recognize this apartment. And certainly as she curls up on the bed, she remembers the good times had there.
Well, where she nursed Matt back from the point of death, wasn't it, in that bed?
Yeah, and other things.
Can I just say that the production design has done a brilliant job with the apartment here. I think when we saw the apartment in season 1, they do a little explanation for why it's so cheap for Matt, because, well, he's blind and there's neon signs outside the window all the time, so nobody else wants the place. What I do like about it is the place looks like crap, really, in this episode. What we see is loads of loads of crumbling on the wall. The paint is all peeling off. Clearly, there's been so many of those windows smashed and replaced that nothing matches each other. And I think there's where the column leads to the roof, there's a crack all the way down the wall as well. So it does look like a place that Matt's going to be able to afford as a pro bono lawyer in New York. It looks like that kind of place. And the other reason why it's also cheap is because of the neon. It's not the greatest place to live, and it's got some neon outside. The place itself is a bit of a shitty place.
Well, we also remember like the place took damage over the last kind of 48 hours from the earthquake as well. So
True.
that's why I'm assuming the cracks were.
Very true. Yeah, very true. Could also be the earthquake. Probably doesn't explain having the paint cracking on the wall, but
No,
but a huge crack in the wall. Yeah.
That's just the other part of it.
Yeah.
Your point.
True. Any other notes about the episode?
Nothing from my side. Pretty much, it's not very Easter eggy, the series so far. I'm supposed to they're kind of holding everything over for kind of the main characters' arcs.
Yeah.
Um,
I think there's a lot more Easter eggs to do with the Defenders series themselves. Like that scene there with Elektra. If you hadn't seen Daredevil Season 2, you kind of know that she's back in Matt's apartment. You get that, but you don't know why it means so much to her and why she's particularly having those moments standing on the top of the rooftop, or why she's going into the bedroom and feeling so safe and secure there. Why she would seek out that apartment. You kind of get it, but you wouldn't get it if you didn't watch the previous season. So that's the kind of Easter eggs I think they're doing with the show.
yeah, and not just like, say, Gladiator in Season 1 of Daredevil.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah, so, Chris, do you defend this episode of The Defenders?
Yeah, each of these episodes have given me something new to like and enjoy. This was a terrific battle kind of episode, but also from that we start to see the Hand's plan, I suppose. It's getting to see again the supporting characters that we've always enjoyed. That for me was a kind of fantastic putting them all in one place is we know something's going to go wrong now, but Colleen has her sword again, it's fine.
Yep.
It's all good, and Misty has her guns. But the most important kind of the standout scenes for me on this episode was Sawande and kind of his capture and the terrifying nature of the actor and his performance, and more importantly his beheading, which was fantastic.
Absolutely.
So yes, I do defend this episode.
And Derek, do you defend this episode?
I absolutely defend this episode. This was cool seeing all the Hand being a major part of this episode. But Sawande's scene was absolutely great, where he's surrounded by the Defenders. Matt as Daredevil attacking him, excellent stuff. Really enjoyed that. The Hand can't bring him back now, so unfortunately the character's gone. We won't see him again in the show. But also having, as Chris mentioned, also having all of the supporting characters in one location together. I'm really looking forward to their interactions together in the future episodes. So yes, I definitely defend this episode. And finally, John, do you defend episode 5 of Defenders Season 1, Take Shelter?
I do defend this episode, and I think in memoriam to Sawande, I'm going to give this 4 drowning mice out of 5. I really enjoyed the opening preparations for war and all the members of the Hand, with the exception of Bakuto, coming together to fight the Defenders. I thought it was really, really good. And Sawande, absolutely the capture, the interrogation, and his imprisonment there was fantastic. A really scary guy. And as you say, it's a shame he's not probably going to come back. He was very, very cool. And I would love to see him resurrected. Absolutely. I think it was really good as well seeing Elektra start to grapple with probably the memories of her previous life as Elektra Natchos. And I think as well, just seeing some slight disturbance in the collective that is the Hand, in particular from Alexandra, kind of really put on a bit of a a course of collision here with the other remaining members of Bakuto, Gao, and Murakami. I think it is a really interesting thing, especially when you factor in Elektra going off the rails from the perspective of the Hand.
Mm-hmm.
I do think that it was absolutely lovely seeing all the supporting characters come together under the watchful eye of Misty Knight. I would agree with Chris. It certainly made the Hand's job easier. But I actually also, my main point, I suppose, of a little niggle is I really want to see the Hand. It's great seeing their weakness, but I want to see them succeed. That there needs to be a few points on their side. I mean, not necessarily in the grand scheme of things,
right,
but I would love to see that some of the defenders are vulnerable to what the Hand can do, because I have absolutely loved the fighting, but I think if it continues where they're continually being beaten back by the defenders with no kind of consequence, that for me has little issues, to be honest, because there's no anxiety in those fights. You know that they're going to come out on top, and so I'd love to see the Hand have a few wins under their belt, to be honest, because so far the weapon that was promised them in the Black Sky has failed to deliver, as Murakami has said, and that's an interesting story. But I would love to see a few victories in this little war go the way of the Hand as much as the way of the defenders. So absolutely, I defend this episode.
Another 3 defends. Excellent stuff. I think it's time to get on to some feedback.
So starting out with email feedback, remember you can always email us in at feedback@defenderstvpodcast.com. We have some thoughts from 108th Sage. Hello again, it's the 108th Sage again, beaming across the pond from the USA. I just got done watching episode 3 of The Defenders and listening to your first episode commentary, and the past 4+ hours of my life have been very well spent indeed. Thank you, 108th Sage. Once you've seen episode 3 and how it ends, you'll see why this seemed a good stopping point. If I was going to get any sleep, but I had to send in a few thoughts on the beginnings of this dreadfully short season of awesomeness. I loved how Daredevil and Jessica Jones meet, and Luke Cage and Iron Fist meet. Then conflicted, then each meet up with the other at Midland, then rode the elevator onto Destiny. Insert appropriate fanfare. Absolutely. I thought that those transitions between 2 and 3, where they meet up as couples, and then finally in Midland, they all get together to fight in the boardroom, I thought was excellent.
Very cool.
Yeah. 108th Sage goes on to say, I loved Claire introducing Luke to Danny and that whole scene. I loved the dressing down Luke gave Danny. That directly addressed a lot of the criticism of how his character was written in his solo show, and hopefully began the thread of him recognizing not only his resources, but also eventually his privilege. Yeah, absolutely. A really important point to bring that to the show, I think, because Danny, of all the 4 of them, is the least street, although it seems as though he's more comfortable at street level rather than in the wealth that he has, but then he forgets that he has that as a fallback almost. So it's great for the show to recognise that. 108 Sage continues, I am eagerly awaiting the first meeting of Misty Knight with both Danny and Colleen. Simone Missick is absolutely killing it as Misty Knight, and so is Jessica Henwick as Colleen Wing. My most hoped for outcome out of all of this is for them to eventually have a multi-season long show starring those 2, hopefully called Daughters of the Dragon, since Nightwing Restorations calls to mind multiple characters from the other team. Daughters of the Dragon's kind of spin-off show, even maybe with a Heroes for Hire element as well, could be 2 really good distinct spin-offs from all these shows that Marvel Netflix have done so far. And maybe even combining them at some point to fight together. That would be a pretty awesome little avenue for them to go down. finally, 108 Sage says, okay, that'll do for now. And since I need to marathon the next 5 episodes fairly quickly, in addition to watching the last 5 episodes of the Doctor Who Season 10, the last 6 episodes of Orphan Black Season 5, and be as current as possible on Game of Thrones, all before Dragon Con on Labor Day weekend, and all that on top of also getting together everything we'll need to demo our game in the miniatures gaming area at the con. Oh, and work and sleep, but who's counting? Enjoy the show. I know I am. 108. Thank you so much for the feedback there. Yeah, it's busy at the moment, I think, for a lot of people in the Defenders community. Certainly for ourselves, thinking that when we finish the Defenders, there will be the Punisher solo outing coming in November, most likely, as well as
Thor Ragnarok.
Absolutely. Doctor Strange making a little appearance there, and of course we've got Gotham, the start of season 4 over on Gotham TV podcast. So yeah, it's all go for a lot of people out there in the Defenders world.
Absolutely, and thanks so much for taking the time to write into us. Really good of you.
Yeah. Our next bit of feedback comes from Michael Booth. He goes, hey guys, not sure where you guys are up to, but I'm all done. And one thing that has really struck me throughout the season is the use of mirrors. There are a lot of scenes where camera is focused on a character in the mirror, or dialogue where the second character is in a mirror, or where the camera pans off a character onto a mirror. It is particularly prevalent with Alexandra, but happens to a lot of the others as well. Interested to hear if you have noticed it as well, and if you have any reflections on what it might be suggesting thematically. Yeah, we certainly have noticed it with Alexandra as well. There's a moment where it's like she's getting ready to go out, and she's got two assistants helping her kind of get dressed, do her jewellery and so on. And she's looking into the mirror. And then after that, there is a moment where her reflection is in a stand-up mirror while she is sat down at the desk after she's cancelled her plans to go and presumably meet and confront the Defenders at the Royal Dragon. And then finally within that scene, you have a hand mirror on the table where her face is reflected on it. I suppose mirrors traditionally have been used as it's a reflection of that person, maybe the good or the bad, or it's them viewing themselves from outside of their own body.
Yeah.
And I think for Alexandra, knowing her current health issues, for one reason, that there could be an element that she is seeing herself as more distinct and distant, I suppose, from herself, because she knows maybe that her time is up if they don't get this substance back, and she can't renew herself. It's why she's instructed Gao to bring the timeline forward, and all of that. So, I mean, that's certainly one aspect. I think as well, the other type of thing may be down to her really sort of reflecting her own personality back on herself.
Yeah, I agree. Mirrors are generally seen as kind of a way of the character reflecting on themselves a lot and seeing the true image of themselves. You know, the only way people actually see themselves is in a mirror, which is the opposite version of the way everybody else sees them, which is quite an interesting concept here for these characters. You know, they are the villains of the piece. They are the bad guys. And this is, particularly for Alexandra, she's seen quite a lot herself in the mirror. So potentially it's that.
Yeah, and I mean, there's also the notion of being able to pass through the mirror to the world that is behind it. And I think...
like through the looking glass.
Yeah, a bit like Alice through the looking glass. It's that idea, certainly with the hand, I suppose that, this idea of being reborn in a different world in the darkness. And it might also, again, no pun intended, reflect on that notion of them being reincarnated within this darkness, within this other world or, other environment that, is also thematically linked to that mirror, that other side that they both Alexandra and the rest of the Hand, as well as Elektra, seem to have been too.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for that feedback, Michael. That's really good of you.
Yeah, thanks, Michael, for that.
Our next piece of feedback is a piece of voicemail that come in for Claire Payne through our website at defenderstvpodcast.com. If you want to send in voicemail feedback, just go to the website, as I say, over at defenderstvpodcast.com, click on the send voicemail button, and you can pop in your thoughts about any of the rest of the episodes of the series. Take it away, Claire.
Hello, John, Derek and Chris. This episode got off to a good start as soon as I heard the classical overture of Brahms. The Royal Dragon opening scene starts with an impressive fight between the Hand and our defenders, but the Hand is only there for one person, the Iron Fist. I like how Stick pulls the defenders together, then Matt chooses to move first so he can get Elektra on her own. Colleen facing a resurrected Bakuto was a really intense scene. I really like the way he tries to get her to rejoin him as his pupil. Thankfully, she refuses. Colleen's tearful conversation with Claire in the police station was an emotional release that she probably needed before realising she is a warrior. I also really like Misty's reaction to Colleen going around with Eversword. A very cool moment when Matt turns up in his Daredevil suit to help Jessica and Trish escape a member of the Hand. Again, Jessica has a great line in this episode to Daredevil. The scarf looked better. Nice sears. Great to see Madame Gao using her own Iron Fist type skills twice in this episode. So by the end of this episode, a head is lost and the Hand has lost a finger. Thank you, guys.
Thanks so much, Claire. Yeah, really good moments in this episode. Definitely kind of cool to see Madame Gao using her power again. Very similar to Elektra's power when she arrived in episode 4 and blew open the door of the Royal Dragon, which was quite cool. Obviously seeing Daredevil back in his suit, particularly with our quippy Jessica Jones at his side, is always good fun. Definitely really enjoyed that.
Yeah, absolutely. Loved the scene of Daredevil arriving to help Jessica from Murakami. Yeah, I think it's a good little touch point, I think, between Colleen and Misty there. And even with Colleen and Claire Temple, it's good to have those touch points between these leading ladies that are there helping the rest of the defenders, definitely. It would be really interesting to see Jessica interact with Claire and Misty and Colleen, because I don't think we've really seen that so much at the moment, and I think that would be really interesting, because with Jessica we only really have seen her interact fully with Trish Walker, who obviously was and is her sort of stepsister to her. So it'll be really interesting to see how she would play well or not with the other three ladies here.
Yeah.
And certainly given some of their relationships with Luke Cage as well. So yeah, I would like to see that now.
Yeah.
I think that could prove to be a really interesting dialogue.
Absolutely, yeah. Hopefully we'll see that coming up. Thanks so much for that, Claire. A bit of feedback from our Facebook group, again, over on facebook.com/groups/Defenders TV podcast. Start out with Robert Phillips. He says, episode 5 feels like the beach after a tidal wave has hit. It's scattered with the remnants of the fight and fury. Bits of dangerous litter to be examined and collected. Nothing quite happening, but everyone terrified and grieving and hurt. The opposing cult storylines of Colleen rejecting the Hand and standing with Danny against Matt realistically accepting his and becoming DD again. Nice ears were well threaded. Yeah, totally agree. There's quite an interesting opposing argument here, I suppose, between Colleen and Bakuto, and then Daredevil finally accepting Stick's offer to go up against the Hand, which he was constantly pushing back against in Daredevil season 2. Good point, Robert. Robert says, the final point, the ethnic racial diversity of the show really struck me in this episode, with actors and characters of many different heritages come to the fight on both sides. I imagine this is quite a strong message in America at the moment and beyond.
Yeah, absolutely. I think for a lot of the conversation about not casting the correct person for particular roles or the right gender, I think actually when you see the whole mix of the Defenders together in this season, you actually realise that maybe some of that criticism is not as well founded as it could be. Okay, there's maybe still be certain particular hang-ups that people may have with regards to the casting of Iron Fist as a white man rather than an Asian man. However, it's not distinct from the original comic basis of that character. So, but yeah, you see it all together in the melting pot, so to speak, and you realize there is a really good mix in there, I think, which is to be applauded.
Yeah, you can't really take those things in isolation. Danny Rand on his own does not a show make. We have Colleen Wing, who is absolutely amazing in the show, and it's great to have all of these characters around each other, with Misty Knight, with Luke Cage, with Jessica, with everybody involved in the good side of the cast, and then also with Bakuto and Madame Gao and Murakami and Alexandra, all very different people and very different styles. So with all of them working together, the show is hugely diverse as a show. So I think they've done a great job, and overall it's just a really good show. Finally, Robert says, can't resist two little notes. The colour scheme is still really important. Did everyone notice the black and white for Bakuto and Colleen confrontation? Really interesting one. And the one I missed out, good catch here, Robert, I completely forgot to say it on the episode, the red lining on Karen's coat. Karen looks like she shops at the same place as the Hand do.
Yeah.
She's wearing her black coat with the red lining. I remember kind of wondering, is she an undercover Hand agent here?
Yeah, it really looks like the dark grey and that kind of real crimson red of the Hand, definitely. Yeah, maybe that's one of her secrets that she still hasn't revealed on any of the shows.
You never know.
Yeah, another bit of feedback from Tina Brown. I have one question I'd love you guys to address. Have they ever spelled out the resurrection rules? Maybe in the comics. I get that they need the special juice or substance, but do they get their old body back like Elektra did? Or can they get a new one? Because Alexandra seems to be dying from old age. Bakuto seems kind of young, but Madame Gao is as old as dirt. Sorry, not sorry. It's an interesting one. I reckon now that we've heard the Five Heretics story, I suspect that was their original age when they became the heretics and used the substance for the first time. So I don't think you can become younger, and I don't think you necessarily age. I think that is simply that you retain the age that you were at the time of their heretical goings on in Kunlun. I think with Alexandra, it's the fact that even though they're resurrected, they're still physical bodies, and they can still be killed through decapitation, it would seem. But that in the case of Alexandra, the tumor that has hit her is something that the substance of the juice, I love that word, the juice, the special juice, can't prevent as such. So but that's an interesting difference from being killed
or through
violence. And it's certainly a new element that we get here, is that they can potentially contract a disease or develop tumors. So that's kind of interesting. But then they would be resurrected again.
Yeah, or maybe it's just been keeping their bodies preserved for a long time. Perhaps she had this level of health problems and it's just been keeping it at bay and slowing the aging process for a long time. And now it's getting to the point where it can't anymore. So her only opportunity now is to get back to Kunlun and put an end to her continual aging, I suppose. But it is interesting. If you look at them side by side, Bakuto would be a much younger character than Madame Gao particularly, or Alexandra. So they may have already lived quite a life in Kunlun before they were expelled. So it is interesting. Definitely not. There's definitely no resurrection rules spelled out in the comic books. Effectively, all they've ever said in Marvel comic books is, don't get used to somebody being dead. They most likely will come back. Almost every character has over time.
Like, the main thing I kind of really want to know now is what this special juice is. I'm assuming it's the chi from Xiao the Undying,
right,
or the Iron Fist, the Immortal Iron Fist. But then I kind of felt it was kind of a blackness, but that might be the blood.
That might be the blood,
that they feed it. So, and just because, as well, Alexandra talks about the darkness and the blackness, yet the chi is so bright and fiery. So it's kind of interesting that maybe something happens to it which brings it over to the dark side,
Yeah.
or something along those lines. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out, or if it even does within the Defenders, definitely. Yeah, John Tara Higley gives us some feedback here. He says, okay, bear with me here. This one's a bit of a tangent, but I need answers, and part of the question would be a spoiler elsewhere. So, Stick mentions that the dead guys that the Harlem cleanup crew were getting rid of were the last of the Chaste. I've been rewatching the Netflix series after finishing The Defenders, and Daredevil Season 1, Episode 7 ends with Stick talking to Stone, or at least it appears to be Stone, and alluding to a greater purpose, bigger war, all that stuff. So somehow, I don't think Stone would just quietly die off screen, especially with that big of a cliffhanger and them sounding like the Chaste is quite large. So where is the rest of the Chaste? Where is Stone? Personally, I'm ready to move on to non-hand related villains, but the end of that season 1 Daredevil episode sure as hell seems like it was setting up something bigger. Also, the black sky in that episode. If the Hand had been attempting this and succeeding, Stick mentions that the kid has been brought back and isn't really some innocent kid prior to Elektra. Why is Elektra such a big deal? Why are the other fingers of the Hand skeptical of the black sky prophecy, of its one they've consistently pursued? Yeah, I mean, I think we had talked about this, that that line then in Defenders from Stick really seems to suggest that Stone has been killed. Yet back in Daredevil, as you say, there is that image of him kind of meditating with, I think, incense smoke, and you're thinking, is that in New York or is it not? It would be good to see Stone arrive or be involved, because otherwise, certainly that from Daredevil Season 1 is a strange kind of reference that is just really there to introduce this idea of a bigger war and a greater purpose, rather than being anything meaningful with respect to Stone. So hopefully we see Stone, but I suspect he's dead and buried somewhere, to be honest. And I think that the Chaste have probably been spread too thinly in their war against the Hand. It will be interesting to see if there is any more, but yeah, Stick is fairly confident that the Chaste are pretty much over, apart from himself.
Yeah, it seemed like it, and you'd think he'd know. He's been dealing with them for quite a long time. So yeah, while he has died off screen, obviously when they were writing Daredevil Season 1, they may have had other plans, and it feels like now that the Defenders is here, this is the big plan. There isn't those other characters available, or those characters would have been just too complex to use possibly in the show. So yeah, it looks like they have unfortunately killed him off screen. He was a big talking point when we got to episode 7 of season 1 of Daredevil. In terms of the Black Sky, this feels more like the other members of the Hand don't want to pursue this path. I think we mentioned in this episode, it's more about this is Alexandra's path, and she's the one that's been in charge, and she's the one that's been pushing it constantly. So it's not that they don't believe in it, it's that they don't want to put all their eggs in one basket, which is what Alexandra seems to want to do at this stage.
Yeah, absolutely. I think certainly at this moment in time, the Elektra or the Black Sky has not delivered the Immortal Iron Fist to them in the way that maybe Alexandra had been promising, that, the Black Sky would pop along, grab the Iron Fist, and at this stage, the Black Sky hasn't delivered, so their confidence in that prophecy may be starting to wane, as Derek says, not that they don't believe in it, but whether then Elektra is the true Black Sky. It's an interesting one. It'll be interesting to see how Elektra continues here, because she has seemingly been pretty ineffective. And I think I can understand why Murakami and Gao are starting to question it and say that we need alternative ways of dealing and getting this gate unlocked underneath New York and trying to get the Iron Fist.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for that, John Tara Higley.
Yeah, thanks so much, John Tara. Yeah, and finally, Conmore Stevens, Ronaldo and Louis Jesus come in with some feedback here as well. Conman says, I loved Colleen's moment of weakness here, made her feel so real, a character All characters are so well played. Who wouldn't bawl their eyes out in a situation if they weren't an emotionally stunted monk guy with incredible powers, an unhinged blind vigilante, a bulletproof man, or a PTSD adult alcoholic? My only problem is this does seem like the shafting of Colleen. I really do hope she has a big moment before this series ends. Yeah, it does certainly feel like Colleen is being sidelined now that Danny's got his bigger, better friends on the scene, and I really hope that he stands by his woman. She has seen his nipples after all, so I think she deserves that, definitely. Ronaldo goes on to say, I like Alexandra because it's becoming quite apparent she has a flaw akin to Mr. White in Reservoir Dogs. Her own trust and desire for a daughter blinds her to the fact that she's putting the others in real jeopardy. I love the flawed characters. Gao is also top-notch, but I do like seeing Bakuto back. He's very confident and measured. Love to hate him. I found the final scene also very powerful. Seeing Elektra curl up in Daredevil's bed had me going, in my head. Elodie is really playing out of her skin in this series. Coming out of the urn of blood would have been a challenge, but balancing the cold killer with recovering amnesiac has been done very well so far.
Totally agree, Ronaldo. Some great moments in these scenes. Interesting point about it possibly being similar to Mr. White in Reservoir Dogs, who effectively his downfall was because of his trust in one of the other characters. That's a really interesting point about Alexandra. And finally, Luigi also says, I do love Alexandra. She's an awesome addition to the show. However, I can't help it. Madame Gao still wins my favourite overall. I just cannot get enough of watching her on screen. So far, in my opinion, she still steals the show as of all of the villains.
Completely agree. I am Madame Gao fan. Definitely. I reckon she will outlast them all, with maybe the exception of Murakami.
Maybe.
I think those two may survive
as the
everyone.
new leaders of the Hand. Very cool.
Yeah.
Very cool. Thanks so much for all the feedback.
Yeah, thank you so much for the feedback, and keep it coming in, guys.
As we've said earlier on in the episode, if you do send in feedback to us, either through our Facebook group over at facebook.com/groups/Defenders TV Podcast, or through email at feedback@defenderstvpodcast.com, or of course through voicemail over at defenderstvpodcast.com, you'll be entered into our draw for our Defenders prize pack, which we're getting together at the moment. It includes the first 3 issues of the Defenders comic book and some other cool little goodies as well. Love hearing from you, obviously, and love hearing your thoughts about the episodes.
Yeah, and of course, please head on over and subscribe to our podcast, either over at Apple Podcasts. Just go through defenderstvpodcast.com/iTunes, or you can search Defenders TV Podcast on any other good podcast catcher. And if you're enjoying it, please share the episodes, share the love of the podcast, as well as, if you want to, you can write a reviews to let us know how you think we are doing. As always, it has been a pleasure speaking with you, and we will speak with you again next time.
Yeah, thanks so much for joining us for this episode. Next episode, we'll be back for episode 6 of The Defenders, Ashes, Ashes. That'll be available through, obviously, all good podcast platforms, so make sure you subscribe to us there. Thanks for spending time with us, fellow Defenders.
Thanks so much for listening, guys. Ta-ta for now.
Absolutely. We'll speak with you next time, fellow Defenders. Bye.
Boy.